All right, I got 6 o'clock, so 6 o'clock, I call this meeting in Saginaw City Council to order. Please rise for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Please be seated. Next on the item is the invocation. For that, Councilmember Patrick Farr.
Thank you, Mayor. Please pray with me. Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to come together and serve the community. Father, please be with all of those in the community who are suffering in this time of COVID and economic depression. Father, we ask that your will be done in the lives of all. Be with all of us who are here to make decisions. Be with all of those who are here to make presentation. It's in Christ's name that we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Patrick. Item number 3 is audience participation. If there is an item on the agenda you would like to speak to, please contact the city secretary. I will call on folks as appropriate. Please silence your devices so we can have a nice meeting. If you need to make a call, please exit the chambers. I'd like to welcome folks watching online. Well, I hope there's folks watching online. Please give us some feedback as to how the audio-visual quality is of your online experience. We'd love to hear from you. If you got any questions after the meeting, please contact the city manager. Moving forward, item number 4 is the consent agenda. Item A is action regarding minutes of September 15th. Item B is action regarding minutes of September 22nd. C is action regarding building improvement grant agreement with Palomino Southern Limited. D is action regarding a lease agreement with Northwest Plumbing. E is action regarding authorization of an individual project order with Kimley Horn for the Saginaw Elementary Sidewalk Loop. Any questions, comments, concerns on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Charlie, second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Let the record reflect we do have a quorum this evening. Councilmember Big Horse is unavailable, but everyone else is here, so thanks for coming. Item number 5, consideration action regarding rate increase request from Waste Connections. For that, Assistant City Manager Dolph Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, we received a letter and supporting data from Waste Connections, who are our solid waste and recycling hauler, asking for a rate increase effective November 1st of this year. As y'all recall, we negotiated a new contract with Waste Connections this time last year, and the rate request is based on the criteria that are outlined in the new contract. They can request adjustments annually to reflect changes in the consumer price index for all urban customers, garbage and trash collection in the U.S. city average for the previous 12-month period. So I pulled that CPI adjustment up, and it's actually 3.49%. They would be allowed to ask for 3.5%, but they're only asking for a 2% increase. So what that would mean on our residential rates is residential customers currently pay $12.32 per month. That's pre-tax. A 2% increase would raise that 25 cents to $12.57 a month. So commercial would also increase 2% across the board, and I've attached rate sheets, the current and the proposed rate sheets for you all to review. We have Mr. Abel Moreno here tonight. No Norm tonight, so do we get a break if Norm's not here? Is that what? No, we miss Norm, but Abel's the new general manager for the region, and so he's here to answer any questions y'all have or might have for him.
Council, questions on this item?
I just want to make one clarification.
Sure.
No change in service, right?
No, sir.
No change in service.
Okay.
And it's 25 cents per month.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We can ask Ms. Moreno to approach the lectern if we'd like to hear from him. Any other questions for this Waste Connection? I guess not. All right. If no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
May I make a motion that we approve as presented?
A second.
All second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? All right. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dolph. Moving forward. Item number 6, consideration and action regarding ordinance number 2020-21, amending electrical, mechanical, and plumbing fees and residential trash and recycle rate. City Secretary Janice England.
Okay, Mayor, ordinance number 2020-21 amends the master fee schedule. As we did this back in September, amended it and amended some of the building permit fees and some other things. The first part of it is updating the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing fees. These were just left out by mistake on what we did back in September. Those are on page number 9. And then the second thing was revising the residential trash and recycle rate, which was just approved in the previous item. Those are the only 2 changes to the schedule.
So the only changes are on page 9.
Page 9 and page 24 where the residential trash and recycle is listed. And there should be highlighted in your packet.
They are. Okay. Council questions for Janice? If there are any questions, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the fee schedule adjustments as presented.
Do I have a second? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Excellent. Thank you, Janice. Item number 7 at 6:06, recess into workshop. Item number 8 is discussion regarding proposed beekeeping ordinance. For that, City Manager Gabe Rayam.
Mayor and Council, this item was actually brought to my attention by Councilmember Bighorse. So it's my understanding there was a beehive or a swarm actually in the vicinity of Valerie's Kid Care, and there was a removal of sorts orchestrated. Councilmember Bighorse was involved, and she expressed her interest in a beekeeping ordinance in the city. So the good people at TOS can do about anything we ask them to. Bryn's staff was able to review some information from, I believe, the city of Euless. So just for discussion purposes, there's a draft ordinance in your packet. The ordinance would allow for a procedure through the municipal court if beekeeping becomes a nuisance type situation. So as it stands currently, a person could keep bees under our current ordinances. I believe that's correct. The proposed ordinance, which was some information that Councilmember Bighorse had forwarded, would just put a procedure in place to regulate that if it had become a nuisance, and I'll defer to the city attorney.
Sir,
further.
Sure, thank you, Gabe. I wasn't entirely clear as to the purpose of the ordinance. Councilmember Bighorse did identify this ordinance for possible discussion. My comments to Gabe were essentially that if we want to encourage beekeeping in a responsible way, that's not what this ordinance does. This ordinance creates a criminal offense for beekeeping that is conducted in a way that creates a nuisance for your neighbor. And so if we want to entertain something like this is what this ordinance does, but there's nothing in this ordinance that supports, favors, encourages responsible beekeeping.
Yeah, when I read this, that was one of my questions is, where can folks keep bees? Can they keep bees in residential and agricultural and commercial, et cetera, et cetera? If we were going to have an ordinance, I would prefer it discussed and address some of those concerns and questions as well, instead of just the punitive aspect. But what does everybody else think? What's the rest of the council? What is your thoughts on this?
Mary?
Mary?
I know nothing about beekeeping, so, if I raise some concerns that maybe aren't concerns, I apologize. But it just seems like it would be a dangerous activity to do in a neighborhood with all of our houses so close together. But like I said, I don't know anything about beekeeping. I don't know if there are safeguards inherent in that activity itself. And I also wondered, do most beekeepers, if not all beekeepers, have a commercial reason for doing so, like selling the honey or taking their bees to a farm to pollinate crops? I mean, is it just strictly a hobby, and if they were using it for commercial purposes, would that be allowed in residential?
So you wouldn't be allowed to engage in beekeeping as a primary use, but, and perhaps Rick can comment just generally as well, if you'd like, on accessory uses, but you are entitled to engage in a hobby or an accessory use that's incidental and subordinate to the primary use. But to your point, that's correct. I know very little about beekeeping as well, so I can't say whether we have budding hobbyists in town or whether there are commercial enterprises engaged in residential areas which would be prohibited.
And I think it would be helpful before we did decide on whether or not we wanted to do this to have someone come do a presentation about it. And, you know, I know this wasn't intended to be the ordinance that would be written if we decided to do this, because it had absolutely no teeth in it whatsoever as far as safety precautions, anything like that.
This is just a general nuisance ordinance,
Right. And
essentially.
I knew that was-
that's pointed towards that. And obviously, Councilmember Bighorse is the person perhaps to ask about the motivation for this, and regrettably, she's not able to provide input this evening, but I agree.
Can we move this until you can get more information? Because I don't know what she's talking about either, so.
Yeah, this is just a discussion item, so, I'm happy to visit with Councilmember Bighorse, get somebody who, engages in keeping bees.
Yeah, Mayor's a good idea. If we get somebody to come give us a presentation, because I've known some beekeepers, and if you do it right, it's very safe. But I don't know that much about it, so
Yeah.
I'd love to have an ordinance that would allow folks to do it if they want to, and if it's possible to do it safely. But how to do that, I don't know. But let's start on that path.
Sure.
So anybody have any other questions, and we can sort of move on this and act on it later? You okay with that?
I can't tell you when they took the bees out of my tree, they gave me some honey and it was really good. That's all.
Okay. Very nice. I've had some removed from my property.
The only thing I had about it was my daughter-in-law is highly allergic to bee and wasp stings, and that just closes her throat up, is what it does, cuts her airway off. So, yeah, I would like to know a little bit more about it before I try to go any further with it.
Sure. But of course, today, people can be keeping bees, and it's as many as they want right now. We have no ordinance says yes, no, otherwise. So we might have bees in Saginaw right now. Well, I'm sure we do. We might have beehives in Saginaw.
Didn't you say, Bren, that, it was actually going to create where they would be breaking the law if it became a nuisance? And
That's right.
If you're
That's-
living next door to somebody that actually is allergic to bee stings, that's a big nuisance.
It could be. So that's the sole purpose of this ordinance. It creates a criminal penalty provision for filing a complaint if your neighbor maintains bees in such a way as they constitute a nuisance. But my confusion was in conversations with Gabe that Cindy was somewhat interested in encouraging safe beekeeping in the city, and there's nothing in this ordinance that addresses that or promotes it or provides safeguards or provides guidance on how to do that.
Mary. Yes, Mary.
So I gather that the city of Euless does allow beekeeping, and they have a fairly strict ordinance about it, or?
This is the city of Ulysses ordinance.
I don't like
verbatim.
that. If we do decide we need a new ordinance.
Okay, so we'll just take steps and get some more information and come back at a later date. That sound good to everybody? All right. Moving forward, item number 9, fire station design update. For that, Assistant City Manager Dolph Johnson.
Mayor and Council, we wanted to bring you an update on the new Central Fire Station project, and I'm happy to report that the project is moving along very well. Chief Spears and I toured a lot of fire stations before we began to think about schematic design for this facility, and That was very beneficial. We were able to talk to the users of the facilities and find out what they liked and didn't like, and what worked and didn't work. And so I think Chief came away with a lot of good ideas that we're able to incorporate into our facility. We've finished the schematic design and are working now on the design development. And the field work, as far as the geotechnical work, is complete. The drilling rig's been out. We've got our soil samples. We have our report back with recommendations on our foundation and driveway design, so that's progressing. We have representatives here tonight from our architectural firm, BRW. Gary and Chris are here. We also have representatives from our construction management group, Steele and Freeman. Scott and James are here tonight to answer any questions y'all have. And so they're going to go through the process we've been through so far in terms of the design of the facility and the preliminary pricing and some of the cost control measures that we have in place to keep us within budget. But before I start that presentation, I'll turn it over to the chief and let him add any additional comments.
Thank you, Dolph. Well, as you can probably all easily predict, the entire fire department staff's excited about the project. That's probably understating it, really. The concepts and designs throughout the process have been shared with the entire FD staff, many who have contributed some ideas that's reflected in what you're going to see tonight. We'll continue to solicit ideas and feedback from the folks who will be using the building. There's nobody better in that regard. So the entire staff is pleased with what you're going to view. I want you to feel confident, and Dolph touched on this, that everyone's working to ensure we stay within the budget, and hopefully at the end we've come in under budget. That's the goal. Within that budget, we intend to have a facility that fits our needs now and well into the future. It'll be a 50-year building to accommodate the needs now and well into the future. The size and geographical location really eliminates the need for consideration for a third fire station in the future. Beyond the budget as a priority, at the forefront are the cost of ownership. The intent is to have a building with low maintenance low maintenance outside of routine care, essentially. Functionality, safety and security of the staff are other balancing priorities. As we discussed early on, one of my priorities was to have an adequate sized classroom for us to use, and that was for every department in the city, particularly for the PD and the FD. The building that you see before you in the presentation has that. It'll accommodate 50 plus. It's been designed in such a way that if anybody outside the fire department is using the building, it's not disruptive to the fire department operations. That was important. The EOC component was another priority, and I'll let the architects show you that during their presentation. One other point I want to make, I know there were many qualified and competent architectural firms out there, construction management firms, but we couldn't have selected better companies for what we're doing. That was evident in our selection project. There's heavy competition, but I think we have the right architects, the right construction manager services for the right project. So throughout this process, I felt that way. I think Dolph feels that way. We're early in the process still, but I've got that confidence already at this particular point. And with that, I'll turn it over to the BRW folks.
Absolutely, yes. Just please introduce yourself.
You bet. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Gary DeVries. I'm the principal with Brown Reynolds Watford, or BRW Architects, Dallas, Texas, for the record. And with me,
I'm Chris Sano. I'm the design director at BRW and an associate principal.
And Scott with Steele and Freeman is here.
I'm Scott McFall, Vice President Operations for Steele and Freeman.
Great. Well, we've had several design meetings, and we'd like to kind of run through where we are. This is our schematic design presentation, and we've had kind of many reviews with the chief and Dolph and a number of staff. And so this is not our first design, but a refined design to balance the project scope and budget. So we've got about a 20 to 25 minute presentation. Glad to answer questions as we go along. Otherwise, we're going to talk about design first, and then Scott, if you want to come up, we'll talk about construction cost in the marketplace and that sort of thing. So anyway, I have control myself.
Please make sure you're speaking into the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Yes, sir. So just as a refresher, The program for the station currently designed is a 5-bay station. There are 9 individual bedrooms. There are administration offices, a training room for about 50 people, and an emergency operations center called the EOC, which is also the storm shelter, and that accommodates 6 people at workstations. So that's kind of the basic program. So we did an extensive programming session. It's really important that we understand how the fire department operates. Although there's a lot of commonalities between different departments, each department is unique. We talk about the leadership, style, the staff, the apparatus, the equipment. We really want to know what makes Saginaw unique. So with that understanding, then we can go back and design each and every space, hopefully to kind of optimize their operations for efficiency. So what you see here is a summary of the space program. It lists each individual room. It has the area, the occupancy, and probably more importantly, all the mechanical electrical requirements, life safety systems, security systems. So a very detailed kind of list. And then as you add up the area for each room, of course, there are always corridors and wall thicknesses and that sort of thing. So you kind of go from what's called a net area of the inside of each room to a gross area for the building, and that's really the outside perimeter. And so right now our outside perimeter is about 25,000 square feet. And we'll get into how that works within the budget here in a little bit. So just to help visualize some of the big categories I just talked about, we're putting up a few slides of some of our recent projects. So here's an apparatus bay. This is actually Richardson Fire Station 1 that opened just a few weeks ago. So apparatus bays are not kind of oily old garages anymore. They're actually quite clean. And they have a lot of natural daylight, but there is a lot of mechanical electrical systems in there. Radiant heaters and drop-down power cords, sometimes compressed air, ceiling fans, coordination of all the apparatus bay doors. And in this one, you actually see 2 styles of door. The red doors on the right are what they call 4-fold or bifold doors. Those are kind of the newest technology. They open sideways and allow easier exiting of the apparatus, so you can kind of see the position of the door. The doors on the rear of this apparatus bay are the return doors, so they're drive-through bays, and those are typical overhead sectional doors. The heart of every fire station is really the kitchen and the dining room. It's a social space, but it also builds camaraderie. So we always try to find that fine line between really durability of the building materials and the interior design. So in this one, you see there's a little bit of wood on the ceiling, but overall it's a very durable and semi-commercial grade kitchen. There's a commercial range, a type 1 hood with fire extinguishing, typically 3 pantries, 3 refrigerators for the 3 shifts. Stainless countertops are not uncommon, as well as typically 2 dishwashers. So again, each city is a little different, but kind of you can get the character of these spaces. Fitness is also a really important component of the fire service, so more fitness requirements. And so these rooms are never big enough to accommodate all the fitness equipment typically proposed for them, but also important that they have access to the outside. So a lot of outside training, CrossFit, and that sort of thing are important as far as their fitness regimens. And then the Emergency Operations Center. So this is Capel's. This is a couple years old, but relatively similar to what you're planning. This has 6 workstations in it, similar to yours. And again, this is also a hardened room, so this resist a 250-mile-an-hour wind for an F5 tornado, and that is per the building code, not necessarily for the EOC, but for the fire station itself, too. So you can see the amount of electronics in there, and of course that varies widely from city to city, and usually starts out with kind of a base systems and then is easily expanded. And then finally, outdoor space is important too, so for the few times that the firefighters do have a break between calls, it's nice to actually get outside and relax a little bit. But you do kind of want to be screened from your immediate neighbors. So here you can see a screening wall around a courtyard, and typically they would have some kind of covered patio in these locations. So that's just a little bit of a vision. Now I want you to think about applying that vision to our design, which is Chris is going to run through.
Thanks. So when we worked with the chief, we really wanted to establish the priority of operational needs, and it starts with the site. So here you can see our site at the intersection of McElroy and Amber. There's a lot of single-family homes surrounding us, particularly on the back side of our site, but also to the south of us. We are adjacent to a school, and then to the south of us is kind of the civic core of the rec center, the aquatic center, the police station, library, and city hall. So that all of that plays into some of our considerations from the operational, but also the architectural side. And of course, I love this image because the background we get to see the grain silos, which are just so quintessential to Saginaw. And as Gary mentioned, we went through several iterations. So we had lots of discussions with the chief to understand what priorities were. One of the priorities or goals was to establish some separation between the fire station and the fire administration, because they are in a way very separate. There's obviously connective tissue, but they are doing much different things throughout the day. So that led us to what we're showing here, option A. On the left side is the fire station side, kind of in that backward C shape, creating a courtyard. The red is the apparatus bay, again, kind of the most important part. We got to get that on the site because exiting is the most critical, the thing that we're focused on from day one. And then on the right side, in the kind of black, is the admin and training and EOC. So option A produced the separation of the two functions really well, but some of the downsides were our adjacency on the western side. We're going to be adjacent to what seems to be an assisted living facility, so that provides some, or produces some site security and privacy aspects. There's also, when we're splitting between the apparatus bay, the two functions, a visitor approach gets a little confused. We want them to not drive up to the fire station side, especially if apparatus are exiting. So it creates a little confusion. So we looked at option B. That is getting the fire station and the administration all on one side of the apparatus bay. So we've eliminated the confusion of a visitor approach. Our bays are still oriented optimally, but we don't have quite the separation between the two major functions, and that led us to option C. It's really the same as option B, but we pulled the admin and the EOC and training a little bit further east towards Amber, and in between create an outdoor area, a dog trot or a breezeway. So it becomes now all of a sudden, it creates the separation that we wanted. There's still really close proximity, but now there's an outdoor space that could become an amenity to both sides of the admin and the fire station. And we looked at those in three-dimensional, very simple diagrams. You're seeing color coding. So again, McElroy is on the left-hand side. The fire station is shown in the light blue. The apparatus, we're showing big arrows of how they're going to flow through the bay. They are drive-through bays. And then the administration is shown in orange, and the purple is training and EOC. So this was that option A. We looked at option B, and then ultimately option C was the direction that we all decided was the ideal solution. And here you are seeing towards the street intersection, the kind of turquoise blue, and that becomes some of our stormwater that we need to manage because the site is undeveloped today. All things that are in consideration as we continue with the design. So this is a little bit more detailed site plan, and we've rotated the site, so just McElroy is on your left. So what you're seeing is the buildings are facing the major street, and that leaves a pretty significant buffer to, in this case, the right-hand side, which is the existing residential. So that buffer is going to help with any issues related to noise or light that might infiltrate the residential areas, and that buffer becomes a good thing for us. The blue arrows are indicating, again, that priority. Entering, the apparatus will enter off of amber, go through the red line, which is a secured fence and gate, separating public from private, and then they'll be able to pull straight through the bay. Therefore, whenever they do get a call, they're exiting straight out onto McElroy. So it's the most efficient means of egress for them. Within that secured red boundary, you're seeing the oval as their courtyard. So like Gary mentioned, they have very stressful jobs. They need to take advantage of those opportunities when they can relax and decompress. So that outdoor courtyard becomes very important for the mental wellness of our firefighters. Then on what will be kind of the bottom of the page, that is the large parking lot on the right is the public parking. And day to day, they're not going to get that many visitors, but if there's a training event, that's what the parking lot is really sized for. And you see the red arrow that enters into the public lobby, and from that point, they can get into either the training room or meet with administration. And then the big red box becomes that EOC. So that's the Emergency Operations Center that Gary mentioned. It is hardened for tornado and will become the storm shelter for the facility. And the floor plan, a little more detailed. I will not go room by room, don't worry. McElroy is on the bottom of the screen here. So starting on the left, the darker blue is the apparatus bay and all the support spaces. To the right is the light blue area. That is the living quarters of the fire station. So the south side of it becomes the sleeping bay or sleeping rooms, and on the north side becomes the living area, so the day room, dining, and kitchen, which all has outdoor access to that courtyard. And you'll see two corridors that go left and right. So wherever they are in the station, whether they're in the fitness room, a bedroom, at the kitchen, they have very easy direct access straight into the bay, because that's the most important thing. Then you're seeing the space between the two buildings, that outdoor breezeway area that creates a little separation. The purple becomes the training room, is that largest room in purple, and the one below that is the EOC with the red outline, and the orange is the administration. So it's just a single corridor, both very efficient plans, but achieve what we need from an operational perspective.
So I got a quick question. So EOC is the storm shelter that's built to F5. What's the rest of the facility built to?
From a wind load perspective, 120.
So police and fire stations are considered critical facilities according to the building code, and so they're designed to 120 mile an hour winds, where a normal building like this City Hall would be 90 miles an hour.
So now that we've got the operational needs kind of taken care of, Chief is happy with us, so that's great. That's where we want to be. We also want to start thinking about the architecture. These civic structures are very important, obviously, from what they do day to day, but they're also a symbol for the community, so we want the architecture to speak to the community. And we have to start with context. So I mentioned across the street the rec center. That's kind of a direct neighbor. It's 15 to 20 years old, I believe. It's primarily one material, red brick. It's a series of flat roofs and then like a couple of pitched roofs to create some architectural roof form, and a little bit of a canopy at the entry point. And these are just observations that we're kind of paying attention to find some things that make sense that might translate into the architecture of the fire station. City Hall, where we are today, there's some similarities. It's masonry, but they've added a couple other materials. So there's two types of masonry that are complementary and contrasting, and also a metal panel. So those three materials become the material palette. Again, a series of flat roofs with an articulated roof as a feature point and entry canopy. And elementary school, again, similar in that it's a multiple colors and materials. You have an entry canopy and this combination of flat roofs and pitched roofs. But we also want to find kind of the soul of Saginaw, and we cannot stray from the train and grain. It's so quintessential to Saginaw that we felt that we had to find a connection there. And the thing that struck us from day one, kind of digging into this, is the authenticity of those roots of the city, and it speaks to the people that we've had the opportunity to meet through the process, and it really became a connection to the materiality. So the grain silos are that concrete that have a life of their own. It seems like a natural material. It can get a rich patina. The rail has the rusted steel rail that, again, is an earthen type of material. It speaks to durability and strength. The railroad ties, obviously wood, have a nice weather material, feel warm, have a warm composition. And all these things kind of work together with each other, even the stone ballast of the railroad. So we took those cues and wanted to translate those into the materiality of the building. So here are the four main material components that we're proposing. Just real quickly, it's a stone that kind of pulls from that ballast of the railroad, a Corten steel, which is a steel metal cladding that is designed to rust, and it becomes this protective layer. So it adds a richness and contrast to the stone, a very durable material, obviously, and that's pulled from the railroad, steel railroad. A concrete panel, which is connecting to the concrete silos, and wood pulled from the railroad ties. So this material palette is very durable, is very kind of natural, all the colorations and tones, and complement each other really well. And we have a couple samples here to just demonstrate what they are in real life.
So do you want to go through each one?
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is the Corten steel. Again, it's designed to rust. As it rusts, it becomes this protective layer, and it does not rust onto your hands once it's weathered all the way. But we're using it just as an accent feature. The stone cladding is probably our primary material. And we worked with the chief to create a blend that creates a lot of visual interest. It's obviously a lot of texture. So this warm tone material, stone with a blend. So there are multiple earth tones within it.
And this is just one of many stone samples that we'll go through, work with Steel Freeman to find the right stone mason and do mock-ups as well.
And then a cement panel. So this is, again, a very durable material. There's no maintenance on any of these materials that we've shown you thus far. It contrasts in scale and texture to the stone and the steel. So again, having that visual interest of these three major materials creates a really great palette. It's a timeless palette. It's not going to go out of style. And it again speaks to the authenticity that we see in Saginaw. And then wood. We're looking to use this pretty sparingly, but primarily in exterior canopies in combination with steel. So it again, kind of recalls to the railroad ties. It's not really a maintenance issue because it is not a cladding material. This product actually is, it's complicated, but it's a modified wood that is very environmentally friendly, but it is real wood that has been modified to enhance the durability, and it comes with a very long warranty. So we shouldn't have any issues with this. So that is our material palette. I think, again, very complementary to the building design, which is kind of the next step. So we've created some renderings showing the massing and materiality that we have, where we are right now at the end of schematic design. So this is a view from the corner. So McElroy is kind of off to our left and Amber is to our right. And you're seeing at the corner, at the forefront, stone cladding around the administration portion of the building with the roof kind of popping up beyond it. And that has clear story windows, much like this space right here. So in the daytime, it's bringing in natural light into that space, and at night it's going to glow. So it becomes that beacon to the community. On that face, you're seeing the Corten steel as that accent material, and the fire department's emblem is going to be a sign on that identifying this building from the street corner. It's unmistakable. This is the fire department. In the foreground, you're seeing some native landscapings. This is our bioswale to deal with our storm retention. So rather than letting it be an afterthought from stormwater, we're trying to make it an amenity to the site and make it something really beautiful. And we are showing a public art piece that could potentially be within that area. Right here, we're just kind of showing maybe a fire department type of memorial statue. Obviously, it's just an idea, but that location seems really prominent on the site. And then as you work kind of to the left, at the far left, you're seeing a tower element that becomes the symbol of the apparatus bay. The fire station side would have the big number 1 on it, identifying it, and the apparatus bays are off to the left. And on the right side, that is working towards a public entry and parking. Here's the street elevation from McElroy. So you're seeing 3 primary volumes or roof forms. And again, it's recalling some of what we're seeing in the city with this combination of flat roofed and pitch roofs. And the 2 ends are anchored with the stone cladding. So the apparatus bays on the left are clad in stone, and the admin wing is clad in stone on the right side. So those are bookends kind of anchoring the corners. In between, you're seeing the bedroom suites, which we're proposing with the cement siding. So that is kind of step back, let the stone kind of do the talking on the ends, and then you've got landscape buffer in between with a backdrop of the sleeping quarters. And then as we work our way around from the public entry, so the public parking is kind of behind us in this view, and we are approaching the public entry. So there's a public plaza, which is a really nice inviting area. You're seeing the native landscaping, low water usage, and the form on the right side is clad in the steel, so the Corten steel accent material, and that is a taller volume because it's our training room, and that continues to become the EOC beyond. And to the left side, you're seeing a canopy with a lot of glass that is the entry lobby into the administration area. And on the right side, you're seeing the screen wall that separates the public, which we're in right here, and on the other side of the wall becomes the private fire station access, which is our next slide. So now you're seeing that screen wall on your left side, that stone screen wall, and this canopy walkway. So that's the dog trot breezeway that we talked about. So that goes in between the 2 buildings, so it becomes a really great entry point into either facility. And to the right, you're seeing the courtyard and the fire station and apparatus bay.
Was that shading part of this design? I mean, as far as it looks like train tracks?
Yeah, right. You're seeing good. You're seeing it is. So that canopy, it's not totally covered. It's really for shade. It does recall the railroad, and it becomes a really great entry sequence from the parking area to walk down there. It's a great area to hang out, again, to kind of step aside, go outside. Maybe you want to kind of be off by yourself. We're creating areas for people to be where they need to be most comfortable. Large gathering areas and then smaller areas. What's great is it's going to be usable by the administration side and the firefighters. And then one more view, kind of wrapping around. So the apparatus bay is kind of behind us here. To the right is the covered porch with a little rain protection directly off of the dining and kitchen area so they can come outside and eat. And then you're looking beyond to that trellis feature, and then the EOC and training beyond that screen wall. So again, the green space becomes kind of the heart of this secured side. And we think that the architectural language that we're using feels really appropriate and comfortable, and best of all is low maintenance and durable for the lifetime of the building.
You want to go back? Sure. Go back one more. I like this one. Well, that's a lot to absorb, so that's kind of the design portion of our presentation. I'd like to take just a pause here just for a moment, maybe answer any questions. We do have just a couple more slides talking about construction and construction costs in the construction market.
Questions, council? Whatever you want.
Do we need a railroad crossing sign right there?
You may.
So one observation is the bioswale.
Yes, sir.
Just putting a detention pond on a hard corner and losing the opportunity to really do something that has some wow factor to it, I really don't want to lose sight of that. And I know a public art piece will draw some attention to that location, but over time, and I know that this will be a public facility and well-maintained as a public facility, but I think we all know that over time, detention ponds just have a tendency to become the stepchild. So if we can make sure that that doesn't become an area of neglect and erosion or constant, if we're constantly having to maintain it, and it's just the focal point of a lot where it's located. So I know there's some opportunity in the back. I don't know how much opportunity we have for watershed and to convey water back over to Amber from the back side of the property. But if we can just really think hard about what we're doing with our water detention on that hard corner.
Absolutely. So the engineering on the detention pond is still in progress. So we don't quite know what the volume required will be. The site generally slopes towards Amber, but the lowest part, as you know, is in that southeast corner, which unfortunately is our primary McElroy-Amber corner.
Sure.
And so we understand the sensitivity of that corner, and exactly, we want to have this as, one of the gateways of, coming into town. And so I think once we get the engineering done, we'll be able to focus a little bit more on the landscape design. We are trying to avoid any vertical retaining walls to have the proper depth and volume of water. We really want it to be as natural as we can. And it can be a shape. It doesn't have to be a rectangle, okay? So it can look more organic. And I think we would like to come back and obviously show you some further development on that, because we are just in the very preliminary stages, but understand your concern.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to make one point. That corridor you see in that photo, not only is it to serve the fire station, but it's strategically placed. The training room is right off there, so any classes or meetings that we might host there during a break, that's the kind of retreat space for people to get up and congregate, make phone calls and all that outside of the fire department usage. That's why it has that screening wall there from the courtyard. So that's an important aspect for that classroom, because we envision that being used by multiple departments for multiple functions. That's a place they can utilize without disrupting the fire department.
You mentioned as well workout space and outdoor workout space. Where would that be?
So it is in the area that you're seeing on the right side with the glass. Oh, thank you, whoever's doing that. So it is we're trying to make that indoor space as large as it can be, but provide access to the outdoors. So like Chief said, we need to create some separation between that very active space and if there's training going on and they want to break out space outside. So what's great is I think the layout provides a generous courtyard space that we're able to divide into multiple use zones that aren't going to then feel small and chopped up. I think there's still work to do to figure that out, but I think we've got the space to do it and a general layout to accommodate it.
We may need additional hardscape at the intersection. The training room is at the far end, just before you get to the training EOC. And we'll have to work with the fire department chief to work on exactly how that works.
Council? Other questions, concerns? All right.
If you'll indulge us just for a few minutes, please, then we will continue. And Scott, if you want to come up here a little bit too. So within our 25,000 square feet can be accommodated, we believe, within the current budget. So that allows about $450 per square foot of building, including all the site development costs, but that's construction cost only. So yes, it is a big number per square foot, but there are many factors which makes a fire station different than a police station or recreation center, library, city hall. And some of those are inherent to all buildings within this area. So just to go through them briefly, within the North Texas area, we do have a lot of expansive soil, so a lot of clays. So it's not uncommon at all for a fire station to be a structured slab. So that is a slab that is suspended above some cardboard boxes called carton forms, and allows that earth to expand and contract without the slab moving. And there is a definite premium of those types of slabs over a slab on grade. The apparatus weight is very heavy as well, about 60,000 pounds for a full fire engine. So you can imagine within the apparatus bay, those slabs are thicker as well. And like we've talked about before, the building code classifies a fire station as a critical facility. So there are inherent, structural requirements that other buildings wouldn't have. And also regulatory requirements continue to increase. The building code and energy codes continually require more insulation within the building. Not a great premium, but definitely it is compounded within. But on the back side of that, it would save you energy use, for the life of the building. So also we talked about the storm shelter. It is regulated by code. The building code actually defers to an International Code Commission and the ICC 500 regulation, which has actually very stiff requirements besides the hardening of the room itself with, say, concrete block walls and a concrete roof. It would also require separate toilets, an independent water supply. So essentially the building can collapse on top of this room and you would be able to survive for 2 hours until rescued. It has natural ventilation requirements. So a number of items which adds cost to the project. And then a few other kind of miscellaneous items. I'm having a hard time reading that. Yeah, I'm sorry. The energy use within the building is fairly high. It is a 24-hour facility, and most of the fire stations now have generators that can power the entire building. So they're fairly large, usually 200 to 250 kW. And so as we kind of go through here, kind of all the special needs, you can see that there are kind of requirements beyond kind of a normal building. And then, of course, we have noticed that the market keeps changing. We've seen rapid escalation over the last decade. We've seen recessions, and now we have a virus to deal with. So just a little bit of insight, Scott.
Where we're at in the process right now is working with the design
Will you
team.
introduce yourself? I'm sorry, because we haven't seen you before.
I apologize. I'm Scott DePaul with Steel and Freeman. So where we're at right now is working with the design team and chief and their team on developing how the cost looks with what the design what's going into that design, and then how that translates into the methods and materials that we're going to use during construction. So we've started that process, identifying, trying to identify that scope, and we're very early. So it's a very high-level view from what we're doing. So we're giving guidance to the team on what we see. A lot of things that we're seeing in the market in today's world is there's a lot of guys out there that are hungry for work, and we're starting to see a large amount of bid participation. So we're, unfortunately but fortunately, in a great position right now for what we're doing as far as budgeting and moving into construction. So it does make it a lot more difficult in the sense of we want to qualify all the subcontractors and those bidders and make sure that we have the right team assembled as we move forward. So that's where we're at. We're working with the team. We have James Hinton here, who is our estimator working on the project. So if you have any questions on what we're seeing in the marketplace or what we're seeing with regard to the design in today's market, that's what we're here for.
And so we have been working with Steele and Freeman closely as we have been going through design. So it's very much a process where we design, they estimate, we refine the project scope, they give us input, and we continue to go back and forth in that regard. So a number of the what we call value engineering or scope changes that we have already accommodated in order to align it with the current budget. We have replaced some of the standing seam roof with a single ply roofing for those locations that you don't see. Some of the tongue and groove soffits in lieu of a wood would now be a wood look metal panel, which is very convincing. So we would save the wood siding strictly for the vertical surfaces that you're up close to and could see. Our canopies for some of the vehicles have switched from custom canopies to pre-engineered, and we have reduced the number of security grills. So with some of the apparatus bay doors, it is great to have those open in the summertime to allow breezes to come through. So with the doors open, you can still have an open grill, if you will, to allow that air to come through, and we've reduced the number of those. So a number of items that we have worked with the fire department not to really affect their operations very much, but still to balance within the budget. So like the chief says, that is a high priority for us, and we'll continue to do so. And then our last slide is the schedule. So like where we started about 4 months ago, we have been working on design. Excuse me. We will have the 100% construction drawings done by about March of next year, so 2021, with construction anticipated starting about June of next year, and then let Scott talk about this, but about 12 to 14 months for construction, so starting summer next year and completing in summer 2022. So we'd be glad to answer any more questions in regard to either the design or some of the scope alignment or schedule.
Council questions?
So I had a question to Scott. Really, this is a combination of both of you. We are going to experience a lot of additional costs because of the kind of facility that we're constructing. But one thing that I'm observing in the massing of this particular building is we're essentially creating two buildings rather than one. And anytime you create two buildings rather than one, you have redundancies in exterior wall surfaces. You're increasing the amount of exterior wall you're having to insulate. Quite frankly, you're having to increase the amount of tonnage to air condition because you're not getting redundancy between spaces. I'm not sure how you're conveying fire suppression from one building to the other. Do you have to have two separate risers? I mean, creating two buildings in the place of one creates cost increases. So I want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position where we're paying a $1 to $1.5 million premium just to have a breezeway.
As far as the cost-wise, obviously we're working with what the design team has put together. As far as what their site for or viewpoint of creating that separation, I think between having your EOC and your training facility and a facility that's accessible to the public, and then having your fire station separated, but having that breezeway connection, that's truly their vision, and working with the city's team. We're going to report that data that we see as far as what that cost is, But to answer your question, yes, absolutely. There's going to be additional cost to having two separate buildings. What that actually is and in the dollars that we see right now, I can't answer that, but that's definitely something we can go through and analyze. So, go ahead.
I got one thing to add to that. We didn't talk too much about the grading other than at the corner with the stormwater, that being the low corner on the site. I mean, it appears pretty flat when you look at it, but there's actually a fairly significant grade change across the full length of the site. So again, apparatus bay is number one. That has to exit at the right finished floor elevation. If we were to continue one building all the way across, the administration building would be several feet in the air, which creates obviously cost impact and operational impacts. And if we obviously do not want stairs and ramps inside the fire station, so we're using that gap between the two buildings to help mitigate the grade change, and then we're able to lower the administration building, deal with any ramp and stairs in between where it's not really the daily function of the firefighters. So we are aware that we are kind of causing some cost increase, but in another way we're managing it efficiently by allowing us to change the floor elevations.
Okay.
We did recognize your concern as well. So in our first ABC kind of design concepts, actually what you're talking about is design B. So our current design actually does work, and the buildings could be brought back together. We had several kind of operational concerns of acoustics. Operationally, the firefighters probably don't spend that much time in the administration and training area. And conversely, fire administration, while certainly can visit the station, don't spend a lot of time within the station itself as well. And from your fire riser question, we are looking at the engineering, but we do believe we'll have one service entrance, one riser, and be able to bridge across
in the roof structure.
Without having a freezing issue.
Okay. Glycol or something, or whatever you guys are.
We might a heated chase.
Okay. We did some research on that as well, so we're able to go underground, and that's pretty common in separation of buildings using one system. So it can either be overhead or we can go underground.
Okay, either way.
Yeah, I'm just making the point that we're creating two structures.
We are.
And it does create a cost impact. So I don't know what the premium is, but I know that some of it, what you're talking about in terms of offsetting in elevation of finished floor, and what that prevents us from having to do around the perimeter of the building and landscaping, and what that might do to impact what we're doing with this hard corner and how it looks. I get that there's some give and take. What I don't want to see is you guys bring a fire station back from the marketplace that's $480 a square foot. And now we're all looking at each other saying we should have built one building.
Understand.
Okay.
So that is our challenge, is to do that rigorously as we proceed through design.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you for your comment.
Appreciate it.
One thing we didn't discuss, excuse me, when you're going through the design, security. Can you discuss what you built in security for the equipment, for the personnel, for their private vehicles? Can you discuss that?
Yeah, I think the separation between the administration training EOC and then the fire station with the back courtyard and firefighter parking that is fenced will kind of create that natural physical barrier between kind of the two primary functions. Beyond that, we haven't gotten into a great detail as far as card access and video. We'll want to work, so we are in conjunction with the rest of the city buildings in that regard. Haven't quite made it to that step yet. But yeah, safety and security and separation for the firefighters and anyone using the training facility. They are 24-hour facilities, particularly if the EOC was activated, is a big concern within any municipal facility. And in fact, that's what we had talked about some of the open security grills to allow the bay doors to be open. It is not an air-conditioned space, right? The apparatus space is ventilated, but it sure is nice on those summer days to have a little breeze blow through the apparatus space. So kind of more to come on that.
Okay.
Chief, would you like to comment?
Yeah, the security that, I guess you're meaning overall, the overall project, first and foremost is a security fence, which we don't enjoy today. But something as simple as fire stations now, when you go to the apparatus bay, you can go to our fire station now, you can walk from the apparatus bay clearly into the fire station. With this facility, you won't be able to do that. If you're in the apparatus bay, you'll have to have card access or a key pad access to get into the fire station. So there won't be any door that's unsecured at any time into the fire station.
Okay.
That's every fire station in the U.S. today. So that's part of the components. We'll obviously have a security camera system in there. All the doors will be monitored. That would be part of that security system also. And speaking to the separate buildings, that was one of the big pieces is using that training room for multiple things, but having that separation in the fire station. Certainly that could be one building, and that was one of the considerations that we talked about. The reason for that separation is to have that separate. In the event we have to operate, open up the EOC and have operations in there, and that training room becomes part of that EOC, that is really separate from the fire station. We're trying to keep that somewhat separated. So that plays into that separation in the buildings also.
Okay, thank you.
$450 a square foot. Just want to make sure when we come back and it's $480. I don't want to rehash is all I'm saying.
When I said earlier the budget is a priority, that's been in our every meeting, every discussion. We know what that budget is, and we're working diligently to stay within that. So we've made multiple changes from where we first started. There will probably be more to come as we go through this process, but I don't want you to think that we're not considering that. In every conversation we have, that's right up front.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Any other questions, council? You have anything else?
No, that's it.
That's it, all right.
Mr. Mayor?
Great.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Yes, Dolph.
We'll be coming back to council at some point for a few issues. One is we need to rezone the property to a community facility. The plat has been completed and filed, but we need to do the rezoning. And then we're also going to be asking for a couple of variances. One, of course, is the drive approach. When you've got 5 Bay Fire Station, your drive approach is quite a bit wider than what our subdivision ordinance allows. So we'll be asking for a variance on that. And then also a carport variance. We'd like to have some covered parking for the city vehicles, the chief's vehicles, protect them from hail damage. And we think we can accommodate that very nicely, make it look very nice, and it'll be within the screen, the secure area. So those are the things we'll be coming back to y'all with in the future.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
As well.
All right, so at 7:07, reconvene back into regular session. And again at 7:07, pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.087, the deliberation regarding economic development negotiations, we will recess at 7:07 into executive session. We will return to adjourn. All right, 7:41 PM. We are back from executive session. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move
Mayor, I
adjourned.
make a motion, we adjourn?
Valerie, Charlie, all those in favor? 7:41. We're out of here.